Welcome back to Mystical Jesus, Episode 6. Today we're going to be looking at what is widely considered to be the most confusing and obscure saying of Jesus in all of the Gospels, both canonical and Gnostic alike. And that passage comes from the Gospel of Thomas, verse number 7. When most people read this passage, they simply skip over it or throw it out because it seems to be totally indecipherable. In fact, even most scholars speculate that it must be some kind of first century colloquialism or cultural reference that we just simply have no way of understanding at this point. But as you'll see in this video, this passage has a very simple and clear message which Jesus was trying to convey. And that message will help to give us a deep insight into the nature of spiritual evolution. So let's take a look at this passage from the Gospel of Thomas, verse number 7. Jesus said, "Blessed is the lion which becomes man when consumed by man, and cursed is the man whom the lion consumes, and the lion becomes man." Now, at first glance, it's easy to read this passage and think to yourself, what in the blazing hell is Jesus talking about? So we'll need to take a few steps back and dissect this piece by piece. Now, as I discussed in my Law of One series, consciousness is using each and every one of us to experience itself through a journey of evolution. And each soul's journey is unique, but each soul's journey follows the exact same blueprint, which are the 7 densities of consciousness. So let's take another look into the soul's journey of evolution and see what insights that it might offer us into this mysterious saying of Jesus from the Gospel of Thomas. Consciousness is infinite, formless, and eternal. So in order to experience itself, it must be pressed through some kind of filter that can break it down to its individual components so that each one can be experienced individually. Scientists study light in a similar way by shining it through a series of prisms, each one isolating a different portion of the spectrum of light to be examined individually. This is the same way that consciousness studies itself, by moving through the progression of the 7 densities of consciousness. The first density that consciousness isolates is the density of being. Spending billions of years existing only as the 5 elements, consciousness learns what it is like to exist in time and space as earth, water, fire, air, and prana. This density expresses itself in the root chakra, or the red ray energy center, and this chakra constitutes our basic needs for survival and sexuality. After mastering first density, consciousness evolves into the second density, which represents growth and movement. This density expresses itself in the sacral chakra, or the orange ray energy center. The growth and movement consciousness experiences is different on every planet, but here on planet Earth at least, our second density is the world of Darwinian evolution, survival of the fittest. So the sacral chakra represents our personal will and the drive to improve ourselves. The first 2 energy centers combine to create what we might consider our basic animal nature, our primal urges, the need for survival, self-preservation, and sexual reproduction. These qualities provide consciousness a powerful catalyst to overcome as it enters into the 3rd density of self-awareness, where consciousness begins to learn the lessons of love and understanding. But the obstacles to love are the primal urges of the animal nature, and in order to graduate to the 4th density, man must transcend his animal nature and exalt it to its highest expression. This is the fundamental challenge of 3rd density. So the animal nature serves as a powerful catalyst in third density evolution, as it creates all of the woes and miseries of human existence. War, violence, greed, jealousy, lust, infidelity, abuse, deceit, control, and enslavement. All of these evils are born of animal cravings, and in order to transcend them, it requires a highly evolved, one-pointed mind, which can use its willpower to reach down inside itself and find that divine spark and overcome the primal urges of the animal nature through love and wisdom. The savage and barbaric man is hardly conscious of his divine nature and is only slightly above the consciousness of the animal. His sense of I refers only to the body and satisfying all of its appetites. The gratification of lust, the pursuit of physical comforts, the need for physical safety, and the acquiring of power over others. This is what man's state of consciousness consists of when only the lower three chakras are activated. So until the soul can sort of break through the veil of animal consciousness of his lower nature, he cannot discover his true eternal nature. And this is the point that Jesus is making in using the analogy of a man and a lion. The lion is considered to be the ruler of the animal kingdom. It represents the essence of man's primal nature, in that, when it is at its worst, it is terrifyingly violent and destructive and selfish. But when it is exalted to its highest expression, it represents all of the power and grace, intelligence, and majesty of such an apex predator. The lion is the king of the jungle, so it is fearless. It knows it can have whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and it has no need to prove itself to anyone. So it is also desireless. And because a lion only has access to the first and second chakras, or densities of consciousness, it spends most of its life in a state of pure being, resting under the tree and carefully observing its surroundings, like a wise, meditating sage, full of wisdom and self-knowledge. And this exalted animal nature is what I like to refer to as lion consciousness. It is a fearless, desireless, thought-free state of being. There is something that we see in the nature of a lion that we also see in a sage. Because like a lion, when the mind is put under control through the power of the will, it becomes silent, powerful, and focused. And instead of being a slave to its animal urges, it puts them to use in cultivating a strong willpower, stillness of mind, and a fearless disposition towards life. A lion is a being of few words and actions. It doesn't need to go around cackling loudly like the hyena, feasting on whatever lowly prey animals it can get its paws on. Its own state of being is sufficient, and so it lives its life in a fearless, immaculate state of peace. A lion may be still and quiet for most of the day, but it is always in a state of alert awareness. It doesn't move unless it needs to move, but when life calls it to action, it does so with a power and ferocity that is both terrifying and magnificent to behold. And this is why God is sometimes referred to as a lion in the Bible. The Lion of Judah is a descriptive term from the Old Testament, which is also used to refer to Jesus in the book of Revelation. It is power and stillness, grace and ferocity, awe and majesty. Spiritual evolution requires that man discards his lower animal nature, only to return to it later and exalt it to its highest expression, through the power of the will and self-mastery. Because in its lower nature, man is a slave to it. But in its higher nature, it is made to be a servant rather than a master. And this is the hidden truth that Jesus is pointing to in this passage. So if we replace the word lion with animal nature and the word consumes with overcomes, the hidden message is suddenly revealed in perfect clarity. Jesus said, "Blessed is the animal nature, which becomes man when overcome by man. And cursed is the man whom the animal nature overcomes, and the animal nature becomes man." So what Christ is effectively saying is that by transcending the animal nature and no longer being a slave to the lusts and cravings of the flesh, those things which once kept us bound to the cycle of death and rebirth here in third density actually become the catalysts that propel us into the fourth density. And the law of one states that Jesus himself was a late fourth density wanderer who was eligible to graduate to a fifth density incarnation in his next lifetime, but chose instead to return to the third density, to bring his perfected fourth density consciousness, which we've come to know as Christ consciousness, to a broken and lost religious world that was desperately in need of a savior. By showing man what it looks like to have dominion over the animal nature, universal love can be embodied and union with God can be realized. There is one passage where Jesus pulls from the primal energy of his animal nature to demonstrate a prophetic message to the Jews. The passage is found in Matthew 21, where Jesus sees that some of the Jews were requiring people to pay money in order to worship at the temple. And seeing such a display of disgrace and hypocrisy, Christ channels his inner lion and fastens a whip out of ropes, storms into the temple, turns over the tables and drives the money changers out of the temple, saying to them, "It is written that my Father's house shall be a house of worship, but you have turned it into a den of thieves." And his disciples recognized that he was fulfilling an ancient prophecy of the coming Messiah, which was written, "Zeal for your house has consumed me." Zeal is passion, strength, and courage, and Jesus displayed his lion quality by defiantly and publicly opposing the Jewish leaders for their hypocrisy over and over again, even though he knew that they had the power to have him killed. His mission to demonstrate God consciousness to the world was the only thing he was concerned with, and Jesus gave his life in order to demonstrate this to mankind, which is why he is said in the book of Revelation to be the lion and the lamb. The greatest display of power is defenselessness, as Christ said to Pilate, "No one takes my life from me, but I lay it down freely." No one who is still bound to their animal nature could possibly have the strength to endure a fate like the crucifixion. To freely lay down one's life as a sacrificial lamb requires the courage and the fearlessness of a lion. So we could say that the degraded animal nature is monkey mind. A mind full of noise and chaos and turmoil, whose only escape from it is to chase after sense pleasures. And a man who's trapped in monkey mind may feel himself to be powerful and strong, so long as he's satisfying his endless cravings, but the moment he's faced with true adversity, he crumbles. He cowers and flees from anything which requires real integrity, patience, selflessness, or non-attachment. But when the monkey mind is balanced and exalted, monkey mind becomes lion consciousness. So a man whose animal nature has consumed him is cursed to a life of misery and suffering. He will spend all of his days chasing after pleasure and running away from pain until his last dying breath, and then be reborn to repeat the cycle all over again. His mistake lies in the fact that he believes that strength is found through controlling life, pleasure is found through conquering life, and happiness is found by grasping at life. He could escape the cycle of samsara if he only knew that true strength comes from defenselessness. True pleasure is found in non-attachment, and happiness is found from being desireless. All suffering comes from wanting the transitory and the impermanent. And Jesus is trying to show us that this is a cursed existence. But blessed is the one who transcends his animal nature and exalts it to its divine potential. The lion lives within all of us, but it is accessed only when we stop grasping at life and start observing it with the fearless, desireless clarity of the lion. Monkey mind comes from body identification, because if I am the body, then the clock is ticking on my pathetic existence, and annihilation draws nearer every second. So I better take what I can get while I can get it, and woe to anyone who stands in my way. Once man sees the divine spark within himself, that his nature is eternal, infinite, and free, then he knows himself as the lion. There is a place in you that is not chasing after the lusts of the flesh like a mindless baboon, and it is the grace and the power of self-knowledge. Lion consciousness is the state of self-mastery through self-understanding. It lifts the soul from the ashes of greed into the beauty of liberation. It resurrects the mind from the grave of sense pleasures into the gardens of inner peace. Blessed is the lion, for it knows the nature of God, and he knows that God's nature is his own nature.